Yeah. So we learned about HTTP protocol, right? And HTTP request template, response template, and the methods which are available in HTTP protocol. We didn't cover all. We just focused on most commonly used, and we learned about few statuses and which are very very important, right? Which we have to remember. Every microservices or every service provider should remember this. Okay. Yeah. So this is what we learned yesterday. That is not related to anything related to Java, right? So it's a general. So whether it is any technology, that information is useful. Okay. Today we're gonna talk how Java is going to support, right? How Java is going to support HTTP protocol, right? So Java started supporting HTTP protocol by using Servlet API. Okay. So it's actual an interface, plain interface, nothing new. We don't need to get panic by naming conventional tab. So it's a very plain interface. It's a very very plain interface which has 5 methods. Okay, and this is there like almost 20 years in the market. So when the time the servlet introduced, it was like all abstract methods. So we have 5 abstract methods in the servlet API. So in the 5, right, 3 will be considered as life cycle callbacks. Okay. So when I said callback, we're not going to call them. It will be called by the server. Okay. It will be called by the JVM automatically. When I said callback, we don't call them. Okay. So those will be called as part of their life cycle execution itself. Okay. So the first method is init, and which takes an argument of servlet config. So init method is initialization purpose. Okay, initialization purpose, and destroy method for uh, destructing. Right, any cleanup code you want to keep in that servlet, you can keep that inside destroy method. So the actual business logic method is service. Okay, so before calling the service method, so I said it's going to be called by the JVM. So before JVM calls the service method, for every request which comes from the client, JVM creates. When I said JVM, it is Oracle JVM or server specific JVM also. So when I go for WebLogic, WebLogic has its own JVM implementation. WebSphere has its own JVM implementation. JBoss has its own JVM implementation, right? So there are so many JVMs are available in the market. Sometimes it can be an open JDK, or sometimes it can be Oracle JDK. But whatever it is, it's for in our understanding purpose, it's going to be a JVM. So JVM will create a new servlet request and new servlet response for every request which is coming from the client. Okay, so that client can be anything. That client can be a browser. That client can be a Postman, curl command, or Java application, .NET application, whatever it is. Every HTTP request which is going to be received by our server, right? So for every request, server will create one servlet request and one servlet response object. So we can call the servlet request and servlet response objects. Um, yeah, servlet request and servlet request objects are like per thread, right? So those are creating per thread. Yes. And we have two utility methods. One is get servlet config to get the object which is created. To get the object of servlet config, and to get another utility method get servlet info. The return type is string, right? Return string. So some information. What does this servlet do, and what is the name of the some kind of description about servlet. So these two are considered utility methods: get servlet config, get servlet info. But the first three are considered as life cycle methods, right? First three are considered as life cycle methods. So init method for initialization purpose, destroy method for destructing purpose, service method for us for um, uh, actual business logic execution purpose. And all these three methods are life cycle callbacks, right? Callbacks. So we no need to call those methods. Those will be called automatically by the server, which is JVM, as part of their life cycle execution. Okay. So this is all about servlet life cycle. Servlet API. So, every time you write a new class, implement servlet. So how many methods you want to provide implementation?
Init,
Three.
service, destroy.
What about remaining two? These two also abstract, right?
All.
All
So
five.
all five. So if you are writing 20 servlets, then how many methods you have to implement? 5 into 20, it's almost like 100 methods, right? So sometimes it may not be a good practice, right? Our focus is on business logic. I cannot guarantee you that all servlets will have initialization callback, all servlets will have the cleanup code and all. So instead of focusing on the business logic, we are focusing on something else, right? We are focusing on implementing Java Servlet API. So to overcome that problem, okay, some people introduced generic servlet class, right? Generic servlet class. So they provided implementation for all abstract methods: init, destroy, service, init, destroy, get servlet config, get servlet info. So they made service method as abstract. Okay, so they left as it is, service method left as it is. But for the remaining methods, they provided dummy implementation. So instead of implementing servlet API, if you just extend from the generic servlet, you no need to focus on the remaining four methods. You just focus on only on your business logic. Okay, and we know that if one class, if any class, not one class, any class has at least one abstract method, that class is going to be abstract class, right? So unless you mark your class abstract class, your code will not be compiled. If you have any doubts, you just try that. Okay, if any class has at least one abstract method, then that class has to be abstract class. So we cannot able to create an object for that class. Okay, so according to that Java rule, fundamental rule, our generic servlet is a abstract class, right? Because it has service method as abstract method. Okay, so every time you do create a servlet which extends generic servlet, you must provide implementation for service method. Okay, so the first interface is servlet interface, which has 5 methods, and one is init, destroy, let's go one by one. Init, destroy, service, get servlet config, get servlet info. Get servlet config and get servlet info considered as utility methods. First 3 methods are considered as lifecycle methods. Those are lifecycle callbacks. You no need to call them, you just provide implementation. When that code moved into the server, automatically those will be called. Okay, we no need to focus on that. But instead of implementing all these methods, we have next extra flavor available called generic servlet, which is adapter, right? Adapter design pattern. So instead of implementing all 5 abstract method, you just focus only on service method. And generic servlet is abstract because according to the Java fundamentals, right, rules and regulations, if a class has at least one abstract method, that class is going to be an abstract class. Okay, but still there is something is logging, right? Yesterday we were fully focusing on HTTP, right? World is running behind HTTP. Everybody submitting millions of records every day. Servers are processing billions of get requests. So we are fully yesterday priced HTTP, right? HTTP Dabba we did yesterday, right? But does servlet is supporting HTTP now? No, right? It's an abstract way, right? It's a generic. There is no particular support for HTTP. So now we have servlet and we have generic servlet, which can support any protocol, not only HTTP, right? It supports TCP protocol or some other SMTP protocol, some other protocols, right? Can be supported by using this. So to give extendable support for this HTTP protocol, okay, Sun Microsystems introduced the separate servlet, which is purely dedicated for HTTP. Why only for HTTP? Because that is the most commonly used protocol, right? Right, in the World Wide Web, WWW. So the HTTP protocol is a massively used protocol, right? Right? Very widely, very commonly used protocol. That is the reason why Servlet API has extended support for HTTP servlet. So now we are again started again we are pricing our hero HTTP, right? So HTTP protocol support, extension support is going to be given through HTTP servlet. Okay, so there is nothing new. I mean, it's not something newly introduced. So HTTP servlet is the child of generic servlet. HTTP servlet is child of generic servlet, and here we have HTTP protocol specific do get, do post, do delete, do head, like those kind of support. Okay, so init and distri already available, right? Init and distri already implemented in generic servlet, so we no need to focus on init and distri. We have to focus only on service method. And they changed how they changed. They changed service method to do get, do post, do delete. So they, I mean, it's like extended support, right? So we are giving extreme support to HTTP protocol. So whatever methods we have in the HTTP protocol, the same type of methods we have in the HTTP servlet. HTTP servlet. So how they are converting exactly? So how the flow is navigating from service to HTTP servlet do get, do post method? How it happened?
Based on the request header, like the method, right?
No, what kind of request is
Browser.
coming from the browser? Is it a get or post? Based on that method, like based on the request parameters, right? It will go like which method to invoke.
Exactly. In yesterday's discussion, we were talking about request template. In the request template, the first part is request line. As part of request line, we come to know what HTTP method the client sent to us, right? So based on this request line parameter, right, what HTTP method comes from the client, that particular HTTP method which is present in HTTP servlet will be executed. So the service method was overridden in HTTP servlet, something like this, right? So it's going to be public. So we are overriding no abstract required. Return type is void. Return type is void. The name of the method is service, and it's going to take two arguments. The first one is the servlet request. Okay, request, and the second one is the servlet response. Okay, response. So inside this, yeah, so inside this you're gonna get the method, right? So method which is coming from the type of method which is coming from the client, right? So method name equals to request dot get header dot get method, something is there. Okay, some method is there. So by calling this method, right, by calling this method you will come to know what method is going to be called by client. So if the method name is get, right, if method name is get dot equals ignore case of method name, then we will call this do get method. Do get method. But before calling do get method, the do get method signature is little different. Okay, the servlet request will be converted into HTTP servlet request, right? HTTP servlet request. So it is just a simple typecast. Okay, so yeah, HTTP servlet request. So yeah, and the same way, right, the response will be converted into HTTP servlet response. HTTP servlet response. So RES, HTTP servlet response. Okay, yeah. So again we will typecast that into response. Okay, yeah, to typecast response and pass HTTP servlet request and HTTP servlet response as parameters. HTTP servlet request and HTTP servlet response as parameter. Okay, and the same way, if post request coming from the client, right? Post request coming from the client. So we have something like this, if, right, else if kind of thing. Okay, it's not as exact code. It is some kind of pseudo code I'm just writing. Okay, yeah, post request. So again, the sorry, it's not RESTful do post. It's do post. It's going to be, yeah, first one is do get and the second one is do post. Okay, so similarly, do head, do put, do delete, do trace, right? So there are so many methods are available. Okay, this is how the HTTP servlet, right? This is how the HTTP servlet is converting service method to HTTP protocol specific method execution. Okay, so when the client sends get request, internally do get will be executed. When the client sends do post, right, post method, internally do post method will be executed. Okay, so this is how servlet API is giving extended support for HTTP servlet. Okay, and the lifecycle methods are already implemented in generic servlet. HTTP servlet is a child of generic servlet. Okay, it extends the generic servlet, and moreover, all the methods which are present in HTTP servlet are not abstract, right? Not abstract. Every method is implementation method. Okay, every method is implementation only. So first thing, servlet is an interface, so every method is abstract. Okay, generic servlet is abstract class because it has one abstract method, but when it is coming to the HTTP servlet, okay, so there are no abstract method, but still HTTP servlet is an abstract class. It's still HTTP because it is an abstract class, right? Abstract class. Why servlet writes must subclass? Okay, so servlet writers, who are the writers?
Tomcat, WebLogic.
No, it is you, developer.
Oh,
Okay, you are going to write servlet. Tomcat will execute servlet, right?
okay.
You have to
Okay.
write. Servlet writers means it's you. You just remove this, right? When you download, you just remove servlet writer. You put Anishuman must subclass it, right? Madhu must subclass it, right? Who is this servlet writers? We are, right?
The
Intelligence. Yeah.
Sunil, it is like compiler will not force you to override it, but you have to do that.
Yeah, you have to do it. How they restricted. So they made complete servlet API as a pure API, right? You can't able to create object for any class in the servlet API. So the instantiation, actual implementation will start from the developer class only, right? So the developer has to extend his servlet from HTTP servlet, right? So my servlet extends servlet, HTTP servlet. So they don't want to start any implementation. Actual object creation will not be possible for any servlet. It is not possible for interface. Yes. It is not possible for abstract class. Yes. It is
Yes.
not possible for HTTP servlet also, because it is an abstract class. Even though it doesn't have zero abstract methods, even though it doesn't have any abstract methods, they don't want to use API classes for actual implementation. So the actual flow starts from our servlet. So they are enforcing, right? So servlet API will enforce every developer should write their own servlet. So okay, they are not going to use generic servlet, they're not going to use HTTP servlet. So the actual implementation will always starts, right? Will always starts with a developer servlet class only. So the developer can be anybody. It can be a Spring, it can be Jersey provider, it can be Apache, it can be Sunil Manaka, it can be anybody, right? So who is going to use servlet API? They have to write at least one servlet class. Without doing that, they can't use HTTP servlet API, right? They can't use servlet API. So if
Yeah.
you want to use servlet API, you have to write your own class. because that is the class which is going to be instantiated. From there, we will get an object created. So, right? So, all the classes, all the interfaces, anyway, we can't create object. We don't need to say that statement at all. So, all the classes which are present in the servlet API will not be instantiated, right? Will not be instantiated. You as a developer, it's your responsibility to create one class, like simple class my servlet extends HTTP servlet also fine, but that is not actual goal, right? You don't write servlets for time pass, right? You go for real time business scenario. So everybody should write servlet. There is no exception for Spring also. When Spring wants HTTP support, when Spring wants use servlet API in their MVC module, they have to write one servlet. What is the servlet which is written by Spring people? Which is dispatcher servlet. What is that servlet? Dispatcher servlet,
Dispatch.
right?
So,
Spring,
Sunil, so this HTTP servlet doesn't have any abstract methods, you mean to say?
yes, zero abstract methods.
Okay. But it is abstract class.
Yes, it is abstract class. You can't create object. So that is what is their intention. So they want to enforce who is going to use servlet API. They have to write at least one class, Okay, so they don't want to use HTTP servlet, generic servlet. So they don't want to use, they want to use their own class to start using this API, right? So that is the reason why we have dispatcher servlet. And when we go to Jersey, I actually forget that servlet name, even Jersey also. Jersey means, it's like RESTful web services, right? RESTful web services implementation, one of the RESTful web services implementation. So anyway, Jersey also has its own servlet. Even earlier days, we used to have, Struts also used to have some servlet. Facelet, some servlet is there. Facelet servlet something. I don't remember that exact name. So there is no exception for anybody. It's a developer or it can be a framework. So whoever wants to use the servlet API, they have to write at least one servlet class, which is child to HTTP servlet. Okay. So this is all about API. So how many classes we learn? Sorry, how many classes and interfaces we learn? First one is servlet, which internally has servlet config, This is also interface only. And next class is generic servlet. And it is an abstract class because it has one abstract method. Next API is HTTP servlet. And I also told two more classes. One is HTTP servlet request and another one is HTTP servlet response. I think these are interfaces. HTTP servlet request, HTTP servlet response. So how many things we learned? Servlet request, servlet response, servlet config. It's actually not learning. It is the naming convention, right? Yeah. So we discussed about generic servlet. Yeah. Then HTTP servlet request, HTTP servlet response. So there are some other classes also there. Some exception. One exception is there in the API. Okay, servlet exception. So when there is some problem comes while dealing with this API, you will get servlet exception. Okay, it's a very small API. It has like not more than 20-30 classes, including interfaces. It's very small API. We almost covered like 50%. Okay, so servlet is interface, and the servlet request response are parameters to service class. So servlet config is parameter to init method. Okay, next we have one class, abstract class, which is generic servlet, which implements servlet interface, and it provided implementation for 4 methods: init, distri, get servlet context, get servlet config, but it didn't provide implementation for service method. So till now we don't have any specific support for HTTP protocol. So HTTP protocol support starts from HTTP servlet. So internally, So it will identify which method coming from the client, then that corresponding do method, right? Do get, do post, do delete method will get executed. Okay, so before executing that method, servlet request and servlet request will be converted into HTTP servlet request, and response servlet response will be converted into HTTP servlet response, and it will execute that do get, do post, do delete, do trace, whatever it is based on the customer request. Okay, while processing this, if any exception comes, it's going to be servlet exception. This is checked exception. I hope you know what is checked exception and what is unchecked exception, right? So this is checked exception. So you might have to handle some places like throws, servlet exception kind of thing. Okay, so this is all about APA. One example we will see and we will try to understand. Okay, in our day one, we understood, right? We wrote one program. I hope you remember. Public class main. Inside this main class, we wrote a main method. Public void, sorry, static, right? Public static void main, which takes string array as input. And inside this, we wrote one sysout, right? System.out.println, some message, hello world, some message. So we discussed this, right? It looks like we are printing a simple system.out.println on the console, but there are n number of steps are performing, right? The same movie again, right? It's going to be different way, but it looks like we are simply extending HTTP servlet. But when it is coming to the life cycle architecture, right? There are around 10 to 15 steps will be executed in the background. We will come to know what are all those, and we will go step by step process. Okay, we will go step-by-step process. But anyway, first of all, let's write one hands-on, one servlet which is child to HTTP servlet, and send one request from the browser, and see the response. Okay, so let me close all this MVC blah blah blah. Let's go to servlet demo. So can I show you already written example, or do you want me to try like creating a project and all? Can I show you already created one? Can you do that like hands-on? Yeah.
Yes.
Dynamic project only, right? Just simple, one
Yeah.
simple. Oh,
Maven web application project.
yeah. Okay, okay.
Yeah. File, new. You just go to Maven project or dynamic web project. Okay, I'll create one dynamic web project and convert that into Maven. So web module, don't select 4, select 2.5. It's enough. Little older version. This is now I think 4K. Yeah, let's go to 2.5 and give some project name as servlet type like my first, right? My first. Okay, my first servlet. Yeah, this is the project name you can give, and just click on next. Okay, next. Next. Okay, finish. So there is one dynamic web project will be created. Okay, for your we're going to start from scratch, right? I will delete my server configuration also. We will freshly configure the server. Preferences. Let me go to servers and delete existing. Yeah, we will start like freshly. We will start. Okay. So we created my first servlet. So this is not a Maven project, right? Let's convert this into Maven project. How to convert a non-Maven project to a Maven project? Right click on the project, go to configure and select convert to Maven project. Select convert to Maven project. It will ask the group ID. So group ID, let's give not com servlet, right? com.servlet.msk, and the artifact ID is the project name, my first servlet. Version, anything you can give, and package that into a var file, some name, right? So my first servlet application, some description. some name and some description you can give. Yeah, you just click on finish. So now the project will be, I doubt about it because my internet will block the dependencies download. I cannot guarantee you. It may success, may not success. I would have disabled that internet first. Okay, let's hope for the best. We are lucky the project converted. Okay, the project converted. So now let's go to Java resources. Okay, so yeah, so we got the pom.xml file. Good. Okay, we got the pom.xml file. So that is what is my servlet demo. Okay, so that's how you should create one Maven web application project. That's how you should create one Maven web application project. Right. So here is the project which is converted into Maven web application into Maven. Okay, so you add this servlet API dependency with Java Extract servlet API 2.5. So here are the, I mean, here we will have all the interfaces, classes, whatever we discussed till now. I'm just pinging on the Java chat. Okay, you just save that. Whenever you are writing this example, you just try that out. Okay, so now let's write one class. For sure, how to write whenever we are implementing servlet API, which extends HTTP servlet. So which HTTP servlet it is? Java Extract servlet.http.http servlet. Java Extract servlet.http servlet. I am providing implementation for do-get. I'm providing implementation for do-get. So when we send a get request, so this do-get method will be executed. When we send a get request, the do-get method will be executed. So I'm just printing some message saying that, hello, my dear friend, welcome to servlet. Welcome to HTTP servlet. And we are printing the request and response details. And then we are getting the print writer which is associated with the response, and I'm just sending some response message to the client. Welcome to servlet API. So if you send post request, then do post method will be executed. So I'm just sending a different message. Welcome to servlet API. This is post method. Okay. So we don't need to spend too much time in the servlet API. So for our idea purpose, we are doing this, right? So just quickly close this. Two methods, simple example. Right? So when you send get request, I will return welcome to servlet API. You send post request, I will return welcome to servlet API. This is post method. Okay. So this is second step, right? First create the project, convert that into Maven project and add this dependency. So now Maven web application project is ready. Now Maven web application project is ready. And write one class, make that as child to HTTP servlet, provide implementation to do get method, do post method. You just look at the code. Okay, you just look at the code. I will share this code with you. You can later try doing a hands-on or try running on your local machine. Okay, so I send a get request. This method will be executed. I send the post request. Then this method will be executed. This is step 2. So we have one more step is pending. What is that? Now we need to instruct to the server saying that, okay, there is some request will come, you execute this servlet, right? So there is some request will come, you execute this servlet, right? Some kind of configuration we need to pass. For example, we do use in our daily life, lives, we do use so many times doing this, right? For example, you're gonna travel on some train, or you're gonna travel on some airlines, right? So you do buy the ticket. So what is that? Some kind of instruction, right? So okay, this is the guy who gonna travel in this particular train, particular berth, right? So this is the guy who gonna travel on this flight, and this is what is seat number. Right? So that kind of information is going to be presented in that ticket, whatever we're gonna buy, right? So the same way, we must do some configuration, which gonna instruct to the server saying that, okay, there is some request comes from the client. For that request, you execute this servlet, right? Some kind of mapping, some kind of configuration you have to do. Then only server will execute the servlet demo. Until unless you do that configuration, your servlet will not be executed. So where we gonna do that configuration? Okay, where we gonna do that configuration? So before I gonna cover that, you need to understand these versions. Okay, so servlet is there like since so many years in the world, right? So in the Java world, so there are so many versions which got introduced with respect to servlet. The most popular version is 2.5, so we will start from there. Then the next latest version is 3.0. I think I just saw the 4.0 also. I don't know what is that. That should be very very latest, servlet 4.0. Even I too don't know, because we are not focusing on the servlet directly, right? We are focusing on this frameworks directly. So we will cover only 2.5 and 3.0. So the difference between these two, okay, whenever we are learning about Spring Core, right? Spring also has too many versions, right? So how many? Okay, I'll come with a different model. Okay, so Spring got released with a version 1.0, and there is a version 2.5, and there is a version 3.0. What is the difference between these two versions? I mean, these three versions.
And it supports its own JDK.
No, Spring doesn't have its own JDK.
Annotations and all, like some enhanced.
Exactly,
New
right?
features.
So when they started with Spring.o, the only configuration we have XML. Okay, when they started, I mean, when they released 2.5, they started supporting annotation configuration. When 3.0 released, it's
Java
like
config
they
also.
started Java configuration, right? But one quick thing, guys, do you want to be a normal Spring microservices developer? Then focus only on the concept like REST controller, request mapping. You want to be a master, then you remember all these things. Okay, versions, history, what exactly happened, and what version there, what change happened, right? So if you remember all those things, then only you will be a master, right? If you just want to write microservices, okay, like any other normal developer, then okay, these things are optional. So what you want to be, decide by yourself. Okay, yeah, let's come back. Yeah, so in the same way, 2.5 means we will do XML configuration. Okay, and as Java grown and the changes are happening from 3.4 onwards, we no need to do XML configuration, you can do Java configuration in servlet API itself. Okay, so which is important, what version of servlet you are using. If you are using 2.5, then you have to do an XML configuration. So where we do that XML configuration, we have some standards. Okay, your XML configuration should be in web.xml file. Okay, so you do write your servlet configuration in XML format, right? That format will be present in a file called web.xml file, and this file will always be there inside a folder called web-inf, right? So this is the standard. So there are so many thousands of developers, not thousands, millions of developers are writing millions of servlets. So if we don't have any standard, then it will be very difficult, right? So that is the reason why we have standards. So whoever in the world who is writing a servlet, right, with respect to servlet version 2.5, they have to write one XML file called web.xml file. That XML file will be present, should present inside the WebInf folder. Okay, so this is what is there with the 2.5. But when servlet 3.0 version got released, it released very long time, not something new, around 10 to 15 years itself back itself. This servlet 3 came. There is nothing new. So from 3.0, servlet 3.0 onwards, web.xml configuration completely not required. Okay, it's pure Java configuration. By using pure Java configuration, you can run your servlet application. You can run your servlet application. How it's going to be happen, we will see that later. Okay, we will try one example with the 2.5. Okay, so as we discussed already, we are using 2.5. See, in web content, we will have a folder called web-inf folder, and here we will have a file called web.xml file. Web.xml file. So every XML file right, should be written in such a format, right? So we will have some XSD validation. In the olden days, we used to have some DTD validation, right? So XSD should be, sorry, XML should be validated against either DTD or XSD. So every XML file you are writing it, you must have some rules and regulations defined for that XML file. So those rules will be defined in XSD or DTD. In the older versions, we used to have DTD. Now no more DTD, everything is XSD. So whenever you are writing web.xml file, there is no exception, right? So you should write your web.xml file in such a format. Then only the server can understand. If you are writing your own tags, your own terminology, then server cannot understand. Server will throw simply an exception. Okay, so so you must remember these tags to configure a servlet in the web.xml file. To configure a servlet in the web.xml file, right? So the tag, what we have to use, servlet tag, and you have to give the name servlet hyphen class. What is the tag name? Servlet class. Here you need to give the fully qualified name of your servlet. What is the servlet here? com.elearnpage.servlet.servlet demo. Right? com.elearnpage.servlet.servlet demo. This is what is my servlet class. If I properly configure, press Control, put mouse on it, so it will become a link. Okay, so I can directly, I mean, IDE will directly take you to the Java file. Okay, so servlet class tag has to be configured, and here you need to give the fully qualified name. Here you need to give the fully qualified name of your servlet, and you can give any name. The name can be anything, but the tag should be servlet hyphen name. Servlet hyphen name. And next we need to do some URL mapping, right? Which URL should do you want to send it to which servlet? We can configure multiple servlet. There is no doubt at all. Okay, you can configure multiple servlet, but most probably in the framework related things, we don't configure multiple servlet. It should be one servlet, and we make that servlet as front controller. That is one design pattern. Okay, front controller. So we will discuss later what is the front controller design pattern, how to do that. But for now, we are writing only one servlet, because in the most of the frameworks we will write only one servlet. But it is also possible to write, configure multiple servlets. There is no doubt at all. It's going to be one more servlet tag. It's going to be one more servlet tag. And how do you do specify which request goes to which servlet? By using servlet hyphen mapping tag. Servlet hyphen mapping tag. And if whatever the name you gave in the above, the same name we will give in the down, and we will specify the URL pattern. Here I gave slash. Here I gave slash, which means every request which is coming to my server, every request which is coming to my application, right, context path, should go to my servlet demo, should go to my servlet demo. If you want to give a particular path, right, so my iPhone servlet. So now we are telling, okay, every request which is coming, which is ending with my iPhone servlet will automatically goes to my servlet, my servlet. So this some configuration we are doing here. What configuration? The URL ending with my servlet should go to my servlet demo class, my servlet demo class. Right now, here we have two implementation. We are supporting get method, post method. If you send get method, I'll give the response, this response. If you send post request, I'll send this response. Okay, so this is how we do write the servlet, and this is how we do configure the servlet. So there are three steps you have to remember, right? One is create dynamic web application, convert that into Maven project, and add the servlet API dependency. That is step one. Step two is write your own servlet, which is child of HTTP servlet. Okay, don't spend too much time. Don't write generic servlet and all. Not important. Focus only on the HTTP servlet, and provide implementation for which HTTP method you want to support. You want to support get HTTP method, then override get method, right? You want to provide post method support, then override do post. Okay, and next thing is we need to configure the servlet. We need to configure the servlet in the web.xml file, because we are using servlet version 2.5. Servlet both the things are little different. The things are little different. We will use few annotations. We will use few annotations. But anyway, our intention is not learning Servlet too much, right? Our intention is learning Spring and Spring Boot. So that's why we are seeing one simple example. One simple example to understand the life cycle. So we are done with writing our first Servlet. Right? We are done with writing first Servlet. So we need to run this application. We need to run this application. Till now, right? It's almost like 17, I believe like 17 to 18 days completed, right? So every time we run our application, where are we running? How are we running and where are we running?
We are running console
Right?
command
Yeah.
line.
Yes, right click, run as Java application we are doing, and the flow starts from main method. Till now, that is what we saw, right? Spring core concepts, Java core concepts, right? Whatever we learned till today, we run everything using a standalone Oracle Java application, and standalone Oracle JDK will always execute a main method by creating the main thread. But from now onwards, from today onwards, things will change. Okay, we don't write our application as a standalone application. We have to run our application on a server, right? We need a server. So till now we never talked about server, right? What is server then? Server is a software, right? Server is a software which will execute this servlet, right? So the life cycle is different now. Life cycle is different. It's not a main thread, main method execution. So the remaining parts are same, sir. Um, static flow, instance flow, memory creation, object creation, static class, class loaded into method area. At least that architecture is still same. The only part which is going to be changed here is main thread executing main method. No, that is not the case here. Okay, in server, right? In server, the life cycle is little different. So server has its own life cycle. Server has its own life cycle. So when the server starts, it loads so much data, it does so much things, so many things. So we no need to worry about that. But at least in terms of application, at least in terms of application, so right, the flow will not be the same, right? So we are doing main method execution still now, but it's not same. What is that flow? What is the life cycle? We will learn that, right? What exactly is happening in the background. But before that, let's run this code and see the output. Then we will focus on the internal things, what is happening in the background. Okay. Okay, so I want to run this application on the server. So what should I do? So I have to download some server, right? So we're going to use Tomcat. So there are so many servers are available for Java: WebLogic, WebSphere, JBoss, Glassfish, right? Netty, Tomcat, Jetty. Oh, there are so many. There are so many servers are available. So we don't want to go through all those servers. We will start with one particular server. Okay, so I want to download Tomcat 8 or 9, anything, it's fine. You just go to this site. um, so download, so go to download. You just type Tomcat 9 download on the Google. So you do see this page. Yeah, so it's not an installable software. You just download, extract, and start using. Okay, we don't need to install Tomcat. Okay, we don't need to install. It's a non-installable software. You just download, extract, start using it. So you just click on this zip file. Anything, it's fine. Zip file or 64-bit Windows zip. This is recommended, right? I think everybody is using 64-bit only, right? And I
Yes,
believe,
yes.
yeah, by default nowadays every operating system is 64-bit only. 32-bit no support now. So I'm using Windows 64-bit operating system. I'm just downloading that. Just click on it. Okay, that zip file will be downloaded. I already did, right? So I'm going to cancel that, right? For me it's not required. So just copy that into some location into your file system. So I think I already downloaded that and copied into some folder. Let me check where it is. Yeah, servers. Yeah, here it is. Okay, I just downloaded it and I extracted. You just download it and you extract it. You will see the same kind of file system. Okay, you will see the same kind of file system. So there are multiple folders are present here. So bin where the run up, I mean, to run our application, we need some runnables, right? So .sh for Linux and Mac. So .exe for Windows. So those executable libraries will present inside bin. So the entire configuration will present inside this conf folder. And any required libraries, right? So to run our Tomcat server, we need some required libraries, right? So those required libraries are present inside this lib folder. And fortunately, this Tomcat will use our local JDK as a JVM. Okay, and any logs while running your server, any logs generated, those will be printed here. Some temporary folder, So to process the application, this temporary folder will be used by the servers. Okay, and any application, web application you want to deploy, you can deploy that into this web apps folder. Okay, work it will be used by the server to process the JSP files. Now no JSP files, right? Only Java is purely for service oriented support, right? So no JSPs. But anyway, any applications are there, then they will use this workflow folder to convert the JSP files into servlet files. Okay. Yeah. So this is what is the server is meant to be. So just download it and extract it and put it inside a folder, server, or whatever it is. Okay. Now we need to link the server to the Eclipse, right? So we can't, I mean, we can run, you can start the server. So what you can do, you go and generate a WAR file, right click, run as maven build. So there is one jar file will be created. You can deploy that jar file into this Tomcat in a standalone approach way, but we don't need to do, right? So let's do in a developer way, right? So how the developers usually do it, they will run this Tomcat, right? They will run the Tomcat from Eclipse itself. Okay, so let's link Eclipse with Tomcat server, whatever we download, right? So make sure you are using Java EE version, Eclipse Java EE version, right? So then only you could see this tab servers. If the servers tab is not visible here, just go to Window, Show View, right? If the servers is available here, it's okay. Just click on it, it will be visible here. If it is not available, go to others and just type server. The server view will be visible. It will just open, it will be open here. Okay, but make sure you are using Java EE version, right? Eclipse Java EE version, then only you see the servers tab. Okay, otherwise you can't able to see the servers tab. Okay, so if there are no servers are attached, then you will see this link, no servers are available. Click this link to create a new server. So we can link the server, right? We can link the server which is there on my local system to this Eclipse. So just click on this link, show some pop-up, right? So there are so many servers Eclipse will support, right? IBM's WebSphere, okay, Oracle's WebLogic, okay, and Red Hat, JBoss. There are so many servers are available. So there is some new server, I think. Let's see. Okay, fine. Our intention is Tomcat, so which is from Apache. So let's go to Apache Tomcat version 9.0. Right, just select this, so it will automatically populate what is the server host name. We are running locally, that's why it's a local host, and some names to the server. It can be any name, you can customize if you want. Don't customize host name. And so where is that server is present? So by default it won't be visible here, right? It won't be available. So for the first time you are doing it, so it looks something like this. Then click on the browse, go to that file system, where is the server is present. It is present inside E drive servers, right? Yeah, here is my server. Just select the upper folder of bin folder, right? Just select the upper folder of bin folder, click select folder, then it will automatically detect that server. And which JRE we're going to use? We're going to use that Workbench JRE, right? So Tomcat will not have JVM, so Tomcat will use our workspace JVM itself. So we are using Oracle JVM, that is going to be our runtime JVM. Okay, let's click next, click next. So let's add this var, right? Var into the server. Click on finish. Now the server will be started. See, it is available here. It's going to be starting in the next few seconds. It is doing some configuration. Once the configuration is done, it will start the server. While starting the server, it will look into that web.xml file. Okay, so let the server get started. It will take a while. If I am going fastly, let me know. No, yeah, it is pretty slow. 4% is complete. Okay, so let it take the time. For first time, it will take some time. I'll do one thing. Stop this. I don't want to this refresh on that. It is pretty slow. I don't want this. So let the yeah, I will start it manually. Okay, I will start it manually. So, but before that, I will do one small change, right? Without you would have been asking this. Okay, I didn't cover that line, but you didn't ask. So, let me delete that. Okay, I will show you the difference. What is the difference between load and start and without load and start? So now let's go to the Tomcat and start the server. Publish. What's happening? I think I stopped that initialization. It is not working as expected. I believe. Let me start. Okay, it's pretty slow. What is happening? So let's go to server, delete and add that back. Pick this. Okay, next. Back. Yeah, this is already liquid server, right? Uh, next, add this server demo. Finish. It's just refreshing that. Oh, pretty slow. Okay, so let these things happen. Okay, once the server started, we can go to browser. I think I asked you to install this software, right? Postman. So we will use Postman to send our HTTP request. Let me disable this antivirus for a moment. Okay, go to protection. Courses. Okay, so yeah, it will be little fast this time. Let's let me restart my Eclipse. Okay. So this is the tool which we're gonna send get post request to the server, right? Going forward, we will use this a lot. So install your end also. So this is one of the client for RESTful web services testing. You know, we do use Postman. Okay. Okay, this is started. Let's go to servers. Yeah. So let's start the server. Not sure if this will work or not. If not working, then we have to be starting the server. Okay. Yes. Okay. Now the server is started, right? The server is started on port 8080, right? The server is started port 8080. So let's go to the postman and send our first request, right? So what request? What is our request? So how do we gonna frame our request? So yesterday we were talking about the URL formation, right? So we're gonna send HTTP. We're gonna use HTTP protocol, and the server is running on local host. Yeah, port is 8080. And now this application context part, right? So application context part, whenever we are deploying on the Tomcat, so your project name is a default application context part, right? So it's going to be servlet -10. After this context path, what is our servlet path? So what is our servlet path? We can configure in the webdriver XML file. It is my-servlet. Okay, so this is what you have to send. Okay, this is what you have to send. So let's go to Postman. Just change this to get. If I send get request, right, we should get that response back. Yeah. So what is the response we got? Welcome to Servlet API. Welcome to Servlet API. So let's send post request. So you will get a different response, right? Welcome to Servlet API response. Welcome to Servlet API response. We'll do one thing. Okay, we will do one thing. You just focus here. Okay. So yeah, time in milliseconds, 63 milliseconds. Okay. So I'll stop the server. Okay, and I'm going to restart my server again. Server started. So I'm going to send the get request. Okay, so I'm going to send the get request. Just now I restarted my server. After my server restart, I'm going to send my request. Okay, so let's see how much time my first request is going to take. To 26 seconds, right? 26 seconds. So if I send the second request, how much time it took? Here, time. How much time it took? 13
Yes,
milliseconds.
very less.
Milliseconds.
Right? So why the first request it took much more time than the second request? Because, okay, I will cover the life cycle now. After that, you will understand how the load and startup is going to help us providing the same response time for all the requests. Okay. So, but before that, I want to tell, right? We just simply send a request and we got the response. Is that what it's happened in the background? No, there are so many things are happening in the background. So we'll go step by step. We'll start from sending request from the postman and what exactly is happening in the background. So for every first request, without load and startup, with load and startup, we will learn these two things. Okay. Yes. Okay. First we will learn without load and startup. Okay. So before I begin the session, I will give one break. Okay, 1 minute break. What you can do, you just take any chocolate or any chewing gum because it's like theoretical explanation, right? It's very important. I just want your it's like full attention. Okay?
Boost of tonic.
Yeah. So okay, let's start again. Okay, so so when you send a request from the local machine, it can be a postman or browser, whatever it is. So that particular component will take care about preparing the HTTP request template, right? So it will prepare that request line, request header, request body. If it is get, no body. If it is post, the body will be appended. So entire that architecture algorithm will automatically take care by your client. So you don't need to worry. So when we send a request, HTTP request to the server, so you assume that we are sending in that format only, particular request format. Okay, whatever we discussed yesterday. So now the server receives that request, then it will check whether the request is for static content. Okay, so what is static content is meant to be? So it's an HTML file, JavaScript file, CSS file, right? It is just simple, some image. So just a simple static file download, then server itself will generate that response and give that response back to the client. So we don't need servlet for that. Okay, to download HTML file, JS file, CSS file, or image file. So any static content response generation, we don't need any server support, right? We don't need any servlet support. So it's going to be server itself will give that response back to the client. So any HTML, JavaScript or CSS or image, it's a file download, simple file download. But our intention is not that, right? Executing some servlet. So if server identifies that, okay, this is not for static content, so there is something has to be executed, right, in the background, some dynamic response. Then what will happen? If server identifies if the request is for dynamic response, then server will look into a file called web.xml file. What is that file? Web.xml file, right? So for server, web.xml is a kind of root map, right? It's a kind of root map. So server will look into the web.xml file. So it will identify for this request, is there any servlet mapped or not, right? So how we are doing that? Using servlet tag and servlet mapping tag, right? So for that mapping, for that particular mapping, the server will look into the web.xml file. If the mapping provided, then server will go and do the next lifecycle process. If the mapping is not available in the web.xml file, then server will return a 404 error, right? Resource not found. If the mapping is missing in the web.xml file, then what error server will give? Server will give 404 error. Server will give 404 error. Fortunately, I didn't add that, right? It's like I didn't add like 404 back to server. Okay, that is missing. Yeah, if you are trying at your side, right, just you add it. If the mapping is not found, then we will give 404 error, 404 error to client, right? So if mapping found in the web.xml file, right, if mapping found in the web.xml file, then server will look into the servlet class tag. Server will look into the servlet class tag, and whatever the class file which we configured in the servlet class tag, that will be loaded. That particular dark class file will be loaded into the memory. So it's a basic Java algorithm, right? Class loading algorithm, bootstrap application class loader. Right, so the same algorithm, by using that same algorithm, the servlet class will be loaded into the memory, and that will be loaded into which area, where the classes will be loading in the JVM.
Method area.
Exactly, method area, right? Static area. So there in the same area, the data class file will be loaded. Okay, if for example, if the data class file is not available in the class path, then what will happen? You will get a class not found exception. In case that that particular servlet data class file is not available in the class path, then you will get class not found exception. We will see, right? We will do this mistake, and we will see that class not found exception. Okay, yes. So this is first exception, right? So already 404 error thrown. If web.xml mapping not found, then 404 would have thrown. Okay, yeah. Don't do any panel change. Okay, so if that mapping found, then if the mapping not found, then you will get class not found exception. If mapping found, what will happen? That particular class will be loaded into the memory, right? Mapping found, class will be loaded. If mapping not found, then that class we will get class not found exception. By loading the class into the memory, right, there is some kind of algorithm, is right? Static loading, content loading. If you do write any static block, static variables, so that initialization happens, that static block execution happens, right? So that is there already in the Java. There is nothing new. The same mechanism will execute here as part of servlet class loading. If is there any static content found, that will be loaded into method area, right? Next. If now server will execute constructor to create an object for servlet class. So who is going to create object for our servlet? It's the server, right? We can't create object. Server itself will create an object. So before just executing the constructor, before executing the constructor, is there any instance block, instance content found, instance variable, instance block, right? Instance variables will be initialized, instance blocks will be executed, then server will execute after instance block execution. This is there with the Java itself, right? This is there with the Java itself. So next, after instance variable initialization and instance blocks execution, okay, if your servlet has zero argument constructor, very important, okay, your servlet has zero argument constructor, that zero argument constructor will be executed. If there is no zero argument constructor, then you will get an exception, right? So whenever you are writing any constructor for your servlet, make sure you are writing zero argument constructor. If you are not writing, it's fine, compiler will generate one for us, right? If you are not writing, it's fine, compiler will generate one for us. But anyway, okay, anyway, you don't need to worry about it. Anyway, you don't need to worry about it if you are not interested. But if you are interested to write, make sure you are writing zero argument constructor. If zero argument not constructor not found, then you will get an exception saying that java.lang instantiation exception, right? If the servlet doesn't have zero argument constructor, you will get instantiation exception. Okay, next, after constructor execution, server will create one object, right? One object for servlet config. For every servlet, server will create one servlet config object. Okay, that servlet config object instantiation is going to be happen. That is the next step. After that, whatever the servlet object got created, by passing that servlet object as an argument, right? Init method, initialization. Now initialization phase, right? Init method will be executed. So you don't need to worry about calling init method, executing constructor, creating servlet creating object for servlet. You don't need to worry about it, right? Our server itself will take care about that. Our server itself will take care about it. You just write your servlet and just ignore about the process. That entire process will be taken care by the server. Okay, so after executing init method, now server will create one object for servlet request and one object for servlet response. One object for servlet request and another object for servlet response. Okay, so after creating the servlet request and servlet response object, server will execute service method. So which service method will execute? Who override service method? Is it V or generic servlet or HTTP servlet?
HTTP.
Exactly. So the starting point is HTTP servlet service method. There the server HTTP servlet identifies which method the client sent, right? Whether it is a get method, post method, put method. Okay, that particular method, right? That particular do get method will be executed. So here HTTP servlet has service method, then that particular service method will get executed, and internally it calls do get method, right? It converts servlet request into HTTP servlet request. It converts that servlet response into HTTP servlet response. Then it will execute do XXX. What is that XXX? The corresponding HTTP method. If client send get method, then do get method will be executed. If client send post method, then do post method will be executed. Okay. Finally, after executing the do get method, do post method, there is one response will be generated, right? Response will be generated, and that response will be sent back to the client. That response will be sent back to the client. Okay, so these many steps will happen in the background. We are not yet done. After response send it to the client, whatever the servlet request and servlet response objects are generated, those are eligible for garbage collector. Okay, so for every request which comes to the client, for every request which comes to the server, right? Server will create a new new servlet request and new servlet response. But the same servlet object will serve all the requests, and the same servlet config object, okay, will process the init method. But okay, there are two things which we have to keep in mind. One is init method execution happens only one time. Okay, init method execution happens only one time. Initialization will execute, okay, will happens only one time for the first request. That's it. So every method, for every method, only service method will execute all the time. That service method internally execute to get to post, but initialization and destruction will happens only one time. Initialization happens for the first time. Destruction happens at the time of server startup or while undeploying our application from the server, right? Whenever that servlet that application is getting away, right? Getting away from the server, that time that destroy method will get executed. But so initialization and destruction are one-time mechanisms. Service method execution for per thread, right? Per request. Per request, there is for every request, server will create one. I mean, server will give one thread. That thread will do all these jobs. Okay, that thread will do all these jobs. Okay. So why the first request took 25 seconds or 30 seconds? Why the second request took 13 seconds? Because for first thread, what happened? The request came, it verified, okay, dynamic response, it looked into the web.xml file, it started loading the servlet class, it started executing some static content, then it started executing zero argument constructor, finally it created servlet config and it executed init method, and then it created servlet request, servlet response, and it started executing service response, then finally the response fetched to the client. So this is first request. When the second request comes, it goes to the server, it identifies for the dynamic response, it looks into the web.xml file. Now the servlet class will not be loaded into the memory. Right? Anyway, in Java itself, any particular class, it loads only one time into the memory according to the Java class loading algorithm. As already servlet class loaded into the memory for first request, right? This step will be skipped. Then it directly goes to the third step. What is that? Executing zero argument constructor, but the server will verify whether the servlet is already instantiated or not. Yes, it is instantiated, then it won't create one more object. It expects that, right? It expects the same servlet will process the second request. So the third step also skipped. Okay, and the fourth step, right? Servlet config object. So already there is one servlet config object created as part of first request processing. Step 4 also skipped, right? And step 5. Step 5, executing init method. Yes, initialization happened as part of first request. So initialization, executing init method also skipped. So from second step onwards, right, from second request onward, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 will get executed, right? Up to web.xml file is same, but all these steps will be skipped. Directly it jumps into step number 6, right? Creating servlet request and servlet response for each request, and by passing those servlet request and servlet response, it will execute service method, it will execute service method, and finally that service method internally executes to get to post method, and finally it will generate the response. So when we compare with the first request and second request, the number of steps are less or more? Less, right? Second request, for second request we are executing number of steps less, right? So that's why the second request response time is lower than the first request. Okay, to solve this problem, what you can do whenever you are configuring your servlet in the web.xml file, if you just configure load and startup, okay, you just configure this load and startup and give some number, what will happen, your servlet, okay, your servlet will not be loaded and instantiated and its initialization happen for the first request. It will be loaded, the servlet class will be loaded into the memory, instantiation happens, and the init method execution, initialization also happens as part of your application deployment time itself. What is a load and startup? While loading that context, while loading the application into, okay, yeah, while loading the application into memory, right? While loading the application into the server, that time itself, the servlet will be loaded into the memory, will get instantiated, servlet config object will be created, and executing init method also happens. So up to step number 5 will be happening at the time of deployment time itself. So from first request, second request, whatever request, right, all the time the servlet will, server will always directly jump into the step number 6. It will create servlet request, servlet response, it will execute service method, right? To provide a unique service response, right, response time, you have to add load and start out. So if is there any configuration did, done, right, for that particular servlet. For that particular servlet, it will automatically happens at the time of application startup time itself. Okay, I'll show you clear example. Let's go to servlet demo. Yeah, so this instantiation, right? So we will add this servlet demo constructor execution. So we will add all the instance block, static block, init method override and all. So we will come to know what is going to happen. Okay. So here I'm just adding a static block. So now you will get a clear idea difference between load and startup and without load and startup. Okay. Static block execution. Okay, and this is going to be instance block execution. We also override init method. Okay. Yeah, so here we will print some message. System.out.println, system.out.println, servlet initialization. Okay, we will also override destroy method. We will also override destroy method. Servlet cleanup. Okay, so without load and startup, let's go to web.xml file. Let's go to web.xml file. Remove this load and startup. Yeah, now let's go to server. Yeah, you just publish. Now the changes will be reflected automatically. Yeah, publish. Okay, then you can just do start is fine, or you can just right click here, um, run on server. Next, already the server configured, right, in our local host. Yeah, there is one server already configured. Just click finish. Now without load and startup, right? My server becoming slow when I'm dealing with this external server. System Eclipse becoming slow. Yeah. So now see that in the console nothing printed, right? In the console nothing printed. So there are no statement printed, right? Only the server is started. Only the server is started. Yes. Now let's go to Postman and send one request. Okay. Now see. Okay. As part of life cycle, the class will load, static block will execute, instance method, instance block will execute, constructor will execute. See. Okay. When I click on it, static block loaded, instance block executed, constructor execution, initialization, and finally do get method executed. Now let me send another request. Okay, let me send another request. Let me add some separator here. Okay, let me send another request. You don't see that static block, instance block, servlet, constructor, initialization directly this do post method. Right? Let me send the second request. Okay, send. See, yeah, two requests sent, right? So 2 times it got printed. So let me send one more request. See, send, right? See, only service method, do get do post method only will get executed. So servlet initialization won't happen for second request and third request. Okay, and finally, if I shut down the server at the time of shutdowning time, what will happen? You know, at the time of shutdowning time, the server will call the destroy method. Okay, so let me stop this. Okay, so while stopping the server, you see that on the console, right, the cleanup code, right, but printed, right? So the destroy method will be executed at the time of application undeployment time or server shutdown time. So that is what is the life cycle. Now let's see, let's add the load and startup and see the difference. Now let's see, yeah, let's add the load and startup and see the difference. Okay, so earlier what happened last time? First server started and these details are printed as part of first request sent. So now let's do one thing. Let's stop this server. Okay, stop the server. Yeah, it's already stopped. Go to application. right click. Now this time I have added load and startup. You see the difference. Run as server. Okay. Now that servlet context, I mean servlet loading, instantiation, initialization is going to happen at the time of server startup itself. See now those logs will be printed at the time of server startup itself. My servlet is ready, right? Servlet is ready. You just look into the logs. Now the servlet static block executed, instance block executed, constructor executed, initialization also happens, right? Initialization also happened. So this time, right, as we are using load and startup, every request only service method is going to be executed. Only service method is going to be executed. So that is what is a unique response time we will generate. Okay, unique response time, right? Without load and startup, so all those things will be happening, right? Static class loading, initialization, instantiation. So everything is going to be happen at the time of first request. If we add the load and startup, so the entire configuration is going to be happen at the time of server startup itself, right? That is what is the difference between load and startup and without load and startup. Okay, and we discuss, right, some exceptions will come. For example, so if there is no mapping form, for example, I gave my mapping as my let's give a different mapping, right? Mm, yeah, mm, yeah, mapping. Let's give it as wrong, right? Yeah, some mapping I gave it as wrong. If you try with different mapping, right? Different mapping. Why should I change this? Let's give a different wrong value in the URL itself, right? Let's put my servlet. Yeah, let's start the server. We are going with the load and startup. Okay, go to server and start the server. It is a bit slow. First, let me try to just right click, run as server. Next, finish. Normal plain Tomcat server itself is taking this much time. You just give a wrong value, you will get 404. Okay, that mapping is not found. So what you can try the remaining things. It's taking too much time. I'll leave about it. Okay, you just try to provide a wrong name here, then you will get class not found exception. You just go and add some servlet constructor in the servlet, some parameterized constructor. You will get instantiation exception, right? Java.lang get instantiation exception. So my Eclipse is torturing me. Okay, leave about it. Okay, you just try your end. Okay, yes. So that is all about servlet life cycle. Okay, so in individual step by step, first you send the request. Okay, so this is what is the request template which is going to be prepared by the client. It can be anything. It can be a Postman, browser, or whatever it is. Finally, the request looks something like this, and these are the steps are going to be performed, right? So if the resource not found in the web.xml file, you get 404 error, and finally the entire life cycle looks like this. Okay, yes. Finally, you'll get some response. I put the step-by-step process, right? So just for reading purpose, for each operation, what is happening. So the material also available here. Okay, but try to draw this for 1 or 2 times, right? You will remember for a long time. Okay, and one more thing. Yeah, so these are the things which we have to remember. So servlet, right, when it will be created, it will be created by the server as part of load and context or server startup time itself. Just before executing init method, server will create, right, one servlet config object. So servlet request will be created per thread. Servlet response will be created for per thread. HTTP session, right? Session will be created for every browser, right? One client for particular time, there is one session will be created, that is HTTP session. And for every application, one last component which I missed is servlet context. For every application, server will create one context object, right? So in your application, if you have 3 or 4 servlets and you would like to share the information from one servlet to another servlet, then you can store that information in the servlet context. So how you can store that? Using context parameter in the web.xml file. Yeah, thank God. Okay, so if you want to share the information across servlets, you can store that information in the context parameter. So it's going to be param name and param value. So this information available across all the servlets. And at servlet level, you want to store some information. Servlet level also we have init param available. So here you can give param name, param value. So if you store, if you configure this at servlet level, this information is available in servlet config object. Right? Whatever you are configuring inside servlet, that information is available in servlet config. So for every servlet, one servlet config object will be created. So if whatever you configure inside servlet, that will not be shared to the another servlet, right? That will not be shared to the another servlet. But whatever the information you are storing in the context, right? Context parameter, that will be available to all the servlet, because for one application, one servlet context object is going to be created. Right, so servlet context is a huge object, so don't store any information unwantedly in the context, right? So based on your requirement, if you want to store the data in the request level, put it in the servlet request. If you want to store the information in session level, usually we use session for logging, right? Logging and logout. It's some kind of logging mechanism you want to maintain, so we do use HTTP session. When you want to share the data across multiple servlets, then we use context, servlet context. So one application, one context, one browser, one session. For every request, one servlet request and one servlet response. One servlet, you create one servlet object and one servlet context. Right? So let's answer this question. In my application, okay, I have three servlets. Right? For example, in my application, I have 3 servlets, servlet 1 and servlet 2, servlet 3. So I put it as S1, servlet 1, S2, servlet 2, and S3, servlet 3. So, and I sent 10 requests, right? To different servlets, right? 10 requests. So one, like request 1, request 2, request 3, like that we send 10 requests. So in my application, I have 3 servlets, okay, and I sent 10 requests. Now tell me, how many servlet context objects will be created?
Context only one.
Right, only one. One application, only one context. That will be created at the time of application deployment or application startup time. That will be eligible for the garbage collector at the time of application undeployment time or application shutdown time. Okay, so only one context. So now tell me, how many servlet objects will be created?
Servlet object 3.
Get. Is it get method?
No, 3 different servlets, right? So it will have.
How does the method will change my servlet, right? So till now that is what I covered, right? So your servlet object is going to be created by the server,
Yes.
only once, which can serve response for multiple servlets, right? So 3 servlets you have, then 3 servlet objects will be created.
Correct.
Okay. How many servlet config objects will be created?
3 servlet.
Exactly. For one servlet config object will be created. Now tell me, how many servlet request objects will be created?
10.
10. For every request, one servlet request object, right? So 10 servlet request object. So each servlet request object will automatically converted into this HTTP server. So how many servlet response objects will be created?
10 is 10.
10 only.
10. Exactly. Okay. Yes. And how many HTTP sessions? It depends upon different clients you are using. That I cannot say answer. For example, tomorrow when we jump into Spring MVC, I will show you some authentication application. That time I will clearly show you. I will open one browser, I will log in, and I go to another Chrome browser, and I will access the data. The things will work. You try it, okay? You just go to some banking application and you log in. Okay, you go to some other browser and you just try that out. It will work, because the session will be, if it is an HTTP session management, right? The session will be created only once for one browser. So how many windows, from how many windows you are accessing that, it's fine, right? It's fine. You can still access the same information once you have the session created. It will be stored. Some configuration is there. By default, session will leave in the server for 30 minutes, but you can change it like 2 minutes, 1 minute also you can change it. Okay. So this is all about HTTP servlet, servlet API. So servlet lifecycle. Okay. So these many things are going to happen. I'm really just scaring to run my application on the server. I don't know if it will run or it will.
Sunil, one thing, what
Yeah.
kind of data we will pass in context param and init param?
You can pass some username, password, right? Header access tokens. Okay. So DB credentials.
Okay.
Yeah. So those kind of data you can pass it out. Yeah. But now, no, especially whenever we are working with a Spring application, right? This to dispatch a servlet, you can pass your XML configuration information. You write your Spring configuration file, right? So how do you pass that information? By using init parameter only. So if it is a Spring application, what you will do, you will pass one parameter, init parameter, and the parameter name is not going to be changed. It is context config location. Okay, and here the parameter value you will give the XML file path where you stored your XML file. Mostly we will put it in. Yeah, that's why. Yeah, so that's what it is.
Okay.
Okay, so with this we are done with the servlet API. Okay, for sure no interviewer will ask this. Okay, because most of the interviewers these days, they doesn't know about this life cycle, and most of them, like, until unless they are really strong working knowledge on servlet API, most of the times they may not have good knowledge here. So in interview point of view, like few years back, this was like a gold biscuit, every interviewer would have been asking this, but now we slowly migrating into Spring Boot, so most of the people doesn't know underlying architecture. So for you guys to get a better idea how Spring Boot works, Spring Boot works internally, Spring MVC works internally, so this will help a lot. Okay, so Spring Boot, Spring MVC, they are nothing new. They also write the same architecture, dispatches servlet. So this life cycle is still remains same for the Spring MVC. On top of this, Spring Boot and Spring MVC does extra thing. Okay, after, as part of their initialization, Spring will take the control. Right, as part of servlet initialization, Spring will take the control. From there, Spring will start playing its own role. Okay, so Spring MVC, nothing new. It is again a servlet. Whatever the life cycle your servlet has, Spring MVC dispatcher servlet also will have the same thing. Only the area will get changes initialization. Right, they will start playing Spring things will start from servlet initialization onwards. Okay, yeah. So this is all about servlet lifecycle and servlet API, HTTP status codes, HTTP methods, request template, response template. Okay, thanks for being with me and learning this. This is for sure, it's useful. Okay, don't worry. From tomorrow, we will start our first microservice implementation. What we will do, we will write our first microservice using Spring MVC, right? Spring MVC, not Spring Boot. First, I will write one example with Spring MVC. Then we will jump into Spring Boot. Then you will get an idea what is the benefit you're gonna get if you use Spring Boot. Till now, you are still getting confused, right? What is the benefit with the Spring Boot? Yes. After we write our first Spring Boot MVC, RESTful Web Services, you will understand what is the benefit you're going to get. Okay, so first we will try Spring MVC, right? We will again do some hard working, right? Then only you will get a understand beauty of Spring Boot, right? So you have to do first do hands-on of Spring MVC, then you come to know what is the benefit of Spring Boot MVC. Okay, so for sure, if you, for example, if you want to write a if you want to write a RESTful web services with servlet, for example, if it is taking 2 days to 3 days, okay, the same thing can be reduced like by using Spring MVC. You can do it like in half day or 1 day, okay. But in Spring Boot MVC, it is just matter of 15 minutes. Okay, in a developer point of view, so this is what is the fast, right? So we can deliver things very fastly. That's why we are going for Spring Boot. But other than that, underlying architecture is still same. Instead of we are doing that functionality, Spring MVC and Spring Boot does for us, especially Spring Boot. We are going to focus more on Spring Boot. Spring Boot does a lot of configuration behind the scenes. Okay, so you should be in a position to understand what is happening behind the scenes. So okay, writing microservices it's a pretty easy, like eating a chocolate cake, right? How you enjoy, so that much easily, right? It's going to be that much easy. But actually our intention is not writing microservices or not writing our RESTful web services. Our intention is learning what is happening behind the scenes. Okay, that's why we are learning all these things. Okay, so tomorrow we will write our first RESTful web services. Any questions? Sorry, already we are 5 minutes late. Any questions? Vijay, Venkat, Madhu, Jupuri, Chintesh, Anshman, Abhiram, Sharat,
No, Sunil. Whatever
Jagadish?
doubt, I in between only asked. Didn't kept it for last.
Yes, Sunil, like you are sharing this code with us, right?
Yeah, I will share this. It is already available in GitHub. I will share that GitHub link with you. But I expect you to, like you are doing hands-on. Just take that as a reference when you get some doubt and then you just look into that code. But I don't expect that you are running that code in your local machine and completed the task. No, that is what is not
Yeah, for the
my expectation.
yeah, actually for the reference, like in previous classes also, like so I thought like they will be available on GitHub, but some of them are not there.
Yeah, some of them are not there. Yeah, I do the things like that for some